Hi there, out in the shop this afternoon and got another knife modification video to share with you guys. This one is a happenstance knife mod. Talk a little bit about what I mean by that. It's a knife modification that I actually was not planning to do, and talk about why I had to do it. So this is going to be a video about Grimsmo Norseman knives. These are probably my favorite knife of any knife that I own, and had the great opportunity to meet John and his brother out at Blade Show last month, Blade Show 2015. Was able to pick up another knife, another Norseman, while I was there, and I'll talk about it a little bit. First off, though, I'll show off the Norseman that I had before the Blade Show. This is a Damasteel version. I did some modifications to this one. In particular, I darkened the acid etch on this to bring out some additional color in the blade. Came out really nice. I brought this one to Blade Show, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out that John had a twin of this. His is slightly different. He has a different pattern here in this I think you call like a pillow pattern with a sunburst. His was a little bit different, but other than that, it was the same. It was the blue and silver two-tone handle, just like this, and the Damasteel blade. So John and I had fun comparing our knives and took some pictures of them together, but this isn't the focus of the video today. Focus of the video is this one. This is the Norseman that I bought at Blade Show 2015. It is a plain slab style aggressive stonewash with a green outline and a green thumb stud. So a little bit of story on this one. I bought this at Blade Show, packed it up in a box and shipped it home, and I ended up losing the thumb stud. It came loose and disappeared on me. Don't know where it went. So I sent John an email and asked him if he could send me an extra thumb stud, which he was nice enough to do. Thank you very much, John. And I said to him, don't worry about anodizing it, I can do that myself. So he sent me a plain titanium, natural titanium colored thumb stud. So I had to anodize that green to match the green stripe here. And in doing that, first of all, green is very hard, very difficult. Green is a very difficult color to get. It's very high in the voltage range. It's about 100 volts and up is where you get green. And when you get into that level of voltage, weird things start to happen. It's very difficult for a power supply to pump amperage through the acid water bath mixture to achieve green. So it took some doing, and you can go up the voltage scale, so you can go from 10, 20 on and so forth, and you can add voltage to get the color to go up. So I started off at about 90 volts, which got a really light green, and I stopped at 90 volts. I dried off the thumb stud. I set it on here. I set it on the blade to see, well, I dried it off, set it on the blade to see how it compared to the green stripe. It was too light, so I put it back, did it again, repeated that process about five times till I got to the shade of green that I liked, which, believe it or not, ended up around 120 volts. And I was happy. I was like, okay, thank you, I'm good to go. I got my green thumb stud. And so I opened up the blade to attach the thumb stud with the screw, and was dismayed by what I found. Apparently, during one of my circular passes of anodizing, setting the thumb stud on the blade to compare the color, apparently at some point I either forgot to dry the thumb stud, or some of the liquid dripped off of my fingers onto the blade and went under here. and sat on the blade. Well, that's really bad because I'll show you my anodizing setup here. I'm doing this one with the camera in my hand rather than on a tripod so I can show you stuff. So this is my setup. This is the power supply that I use. It's the most popular power supply for doing anodization. And this is my tank setup. Really nice. I got a big piece of titanium here for the negative side. I've got this small piece hanging here. It's got a little shelf. I took the titanium and I folded it like this to make a little shelf. So I just attach my positive lead on the back here, set the part right there on the shelf that I want to anodize, hit the power, dial in the voltage, and there you go. Anyway, back to the problem I occurred. So what happened was, apparently at some point I got some of that. Oh, what I was going to say is that the solution in here is water, and I use sulfuric acid. You pour in a small amount of sulfuric acid and you mix it up, and that's your solution that transfers your voltage over. Well, that solution has sulfuric acid in it. It's relatively weak, but still. So back to the problem. You can kind of guess where I'm going here. Set the thumb stud on there to check the color, and some of I guess my fingers were wet or I didn't dry it one of the 4 or 5 passes that I did, and the acid water ran down and set on the blade for probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So when I went to install the thumb stud and I was done with my work, I opened the blade, saw the spot sitting on there, immediately knew I probably had a problem, wiped the spot off, and of course it had stained or made a ghost image on the blade in the shape of the water spot. Like, okay, well, that's not good. So now I get to do some blade work. Not planned. This is what I say, it's a happenstance mod. It was not a planned work. So I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm doing some blade work on this Norseman that I wasn't planning to do. So I gave some thought to it. Well, I could tumble it, which is what it was. It was tumbled originally. I could tumble it. I could hand satin finish it with Scotch Brite pad or some sandpaper. In other words, I could do a hand satin finish on it, or I could polish it. And I thought, you know what? I think a polish would look pretty neat. John has done several Norsemen in a polished blade format, so I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. So here's how it came out. So there you go. You can probably see the camera and me reflecting in the back of the blade because it's so shiny. It came out beautiful. Just gorgeous. Well, mirror polished finished blade is really nice, but it sure does attract fingerprints, but that's okay. I did the work very carefully. I'll talk about what I used. So pretty straightforward. I used a Dremel tool with a polishing felt. It's all black because that's what happens when you're polishing, it turns it black, but that's what I used right there. And you chuck it up in the Dremel tool, and you just go along the edge like that, back and forth, and the magic stuff that gets you that super duper gloss finish is this stuff, Flitz Polish. So metal, plastic, fiberglass, this stuff works magic for polishing metal. Absolutely amazing stuff. And so what you do is you just put a little bit of Flitz on here, and then you go back and forth. You get about, I don't know, maybe a minute's worth of usage before the Flitz turns dark black because it's mixing with particles of the metal. And then you add more Flitz and you do it again and again and again and again and over and over and over again until you eventually get to a polish. You need to be careful. You don't want to mess with the heat treating, so you don't do it too long or stay in any one place for very long. You just keep moving back and forth, and you pause every 30 seconds or a minute or so and add some more flits and just keep going. So it took probably about, I would say, an hour per side to achieve this point here. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but so what I did is I did all of the work on just the flats. So I did the flats here, the flat completely under here, including the where the thumb stud sticks out on both sides. I did the flats. I didn't do the top. I left that stone washed, and I did not really do this milled area here. It probably looks like I did, but actually all I did was, after I was finished spending an hour per side on the flats, I just took a little bit of flits with a cloth, on the end of the cloth with my finger, and I just did circles in here. One pass, that's it, for the flats. One pass for this flat, one pass for this flat with flits in just my finger. And so it's still relatively stone washed here. It just brought out a little bit of shine. I wasn't trying to achieve a mirror finish on the milled section, just on the flats here. So that's how it came out, and I now have a polished Norseman, and I think it looks awesome. Awesome! Gives it a flair that what was maybe otherwise a kind of sort of more of the plainish, simplistic looking Norseman, as opposed to super bling, damn a steel blade, mega bling, this baby. I now have a relatively plain handle, but with a super polished blade. Looks awesome. Okay, next thing is, this came with a plain stone-washed pocket clip, like this one. This one has a blue head, blue logo. Their logo is awesome. Love your logo, John. Except this one, and it's stone-washed. This one came with a pocket clip just like this one, except it didn't have the color here. It was just all stone-washed. So I thought, gotta give it a little bit more color. Come on, guys. So, ta-da. Satin green pocket clip. How did I do this? Well, it was stone washed, as I said, just like that one. And now it's satin. How do I do the satin? That's very easy. You just use a Scotch-Brite pad. I did this completely by hand with a Scotch-Brite pad, and then 400 grit sandpaper to get rid of some of the little finer scratches, and then anodize it. Anodizing this was a nightmare. As I said, green is hard. I was trying initially maybe to go for a mirror finish on the pocket clip. No. Mirror finish at 120 volts, forget about it. It just gets all weird. So I decided to go satin, and I learned something else in the process, which was 90 volts is hard. I'm going to go back to the tank for a minute and show you something here. So you can see this is a pretty big tank. I mean, I could fit like 10 knives in there. Well, when you crank this baby up to 120 volts and you start anodizing, this power supply gets real unhappy trying to run 120 volts at 1 amp through that tank. It is not a happy power supply, and it does not produce good results. So I created a small part high voltage setup, which is really simple because I'm not going to use it that much. I'm not planning to mess around with green too often. Anything gold and down is 50 volts and less is easy. This tank works great for anything below 50 volts, which is bronze, copper, blue, purple, gold. Everything works just fine in this big tank. And it's much nicer to work in because you got a lot of space and you got a shelf and blah, blah, blah. but green, not a good setup. So what I did was I just grabbed an old coffee can here. I got another piece of titanium, filled it with water, added a little bit of acid to it, and you just connect your negative lead here, and then you need a piece of titanium rod like this, and you attach your positive lead to the end. You hook your part on there, you drop it in, and you hit the power, and you get green. And because this is a small container, the power supply does a much better job of getting green and pumping the voltage through this little amount of water. So this is my new small part high voltage setup here. Although, as I said, green's not something I plan on spending a whole lot of time with because it is a nightmare. One of the things, other thing I wanted to mention too was setting up for doing anodization. You want to make sure the part is super clean. I would recommend you either need to use multi-etch, which is a pain because you have to heat it up, or I just use hydrofluoric acid. Got it in a little Jiffy container here. Take the lid off. So that is hydrofluoric acid, and you just dip the part in there right before you're going to anodize it, and it gets rid of any imperfections or impurities or any dirt or anything like that that might be on the part you're about to anodize. Don't leave it in there for long. The longer you leave it in there, it will affect your finish. So if you want a glossy finish or a satin finish, and you put it in here and you leave it in here for more than about 5 seconds, it'll remove that finish. But if you just dip it in there for a second or two, it'll clean off any imperfections. It'll remove any thin oxidation layer, and then immediately take it out of here and put it into some water, and keep it in the water so that it doesn't make contact with the air, because you don't want an oxidation layer to form on the titanium. So keep it in the water until you're ready to anodize, and then immediately move it into your tank, and then leave it in the tank until you hit the power, so that it comes out. It gives you a much better anodization. Color comes out better, and everything just looks better. So that is a happenstance mod on my Norseman. Really happy with the polished blade, and very happy with the way the pocket clip came out. Adds a splash of color to the back. And again, thank you, John, for the replacement thumb stud. It looks great. And loving Norseman number 2. These are not for sale, so don't even ask. Thanks, everyone.